and we meet again for this last presentation, last talk of the paddle sports show. I'm welcoming Bob Timms. Again, from last year, we started talking about this topic last year, and Bob has done some work over the years. So we will be during this presentation both in French and English, because a lot of manufacturers are French and are interested in the topic. Voilà, on se retrouve pour poursuivre les discussions de l'année dernière. On alternera entre le français et l'anglais parce qu'il y a pas mal de fabricants qui sont français et qui sont intéressés par le sujet. Et c'est bien qu'on ait... alors cette année c'est un petit peu différent puisqu'on enregistre. We are recording this year, so this will be on the Paddle Sports Show channel as well as on YouTube, so people can follow the ongoing outcomes of the discussion. Voilà, on enregistre cette année, donc ça va passer sur YouTube et on pourra s'y référer en français, en anglais. Donc c'est important d'avoir les deux langues. Bob, you get going. Where do we stand with the recycling? Bob, on en est où sur ce recyclage?
Okay. So first of all, thanks everybody and thanks to Toon for letting me come back and have a second go at doing this. I don't want to recap fully what I talked about last year, but I've got to go back there a little bit to set the stage for what I'm talking about this year. So. I work for a company that just runs kids' activity holidays. That's where I come from, and so why I kind of got involved in this subject. It was important to me because I've got children and I think about my children's future, but also simply because we're a really big company with lots and lots of children's camps, colony vacances in Europe and in the UK and in Australia, and we buy a lot of kit. Okay. And we've been running for over 60 years, so we've got a lot of boats. There is a big graveyard of boats. This is just one small example. It's a lot tidier than this now. But for example, in the UK, I've got one centre where I've got 50 DAG Canadiers to move on. And then in the Ardèche, we've got a lot of boats that will be taken to Damien over the next year or so. So we accumulated a lot of equipment, and I basically was, how do I get rid of this equipment? I've got a huge amount of old retired boats, but also paddles, buoyancy, PFDs, and so much kit. And I wanted to do the right thing. So,
et Bob travaille pour une société donc qui est très consommatrice de bateaux, plusieurs centaines, puisqu'ils ont des camps d'été en France, en Grande-Bretagne, et donc la motivation est là pour la société de trouver des solutions de recyclage.
And so my first port of call, I went straight to Graham because I'd known Graham many years and said, Graham, how do I recycle these boats? And Graham said it's difficult, and he gave me a couple of pointers. So I started chasing around the UK talking to these different plastic recycling companies. And each time I went to one, they would say, yeah, you can do it, but we won't do it. And I just kept getting passed on from one company to another. And in the end, they said, the quantity you have, even though I have like 5 tons of plastic boats to get rid of, they say it's still too small. It's not enough. We're not interested. And so I ended up in this situation where I was seeing that these companies are taking this plastic or taking these old pieces of equipment. They're making incredible things out of them, like this plastic, all these plastic wood products. But I can't get my stuff into the system. And everybody else must be the same. If I'm the biggest company in the UK and I've got the biggest quantity of equipment and I can't get anyone to take it, then smaller organisations must be in exactly the same. So how do we solve this?
Et Bob se rend compte assez rapidement en approchant des sociétés de recyclage qu'en fait, même en étant la plus grosse société consommatrice de kayak en Grande-Bretagne, il est en fait trop petit, il arrive avec ses 5 tonnes de plastique, ça n'est pas suffisant et il faut trouver des solutions pour pouvoir traiter ces produits qui ne sont pas en quantité suffisante.
And so I couldn't find a solution, so what I did was I'm going to have to keep working on this solution. So I just had this wacky idea when I bumped into Toon from Kayak Session, and I just picked up the phone and ran Toon and said, This is crazy. This is our industry. We need to help ourselves and help each other find a solution. So that was how I got to here last year, and Toon from Kayak Session in association with the show here gave me the opportunity to talk last year. And so I came here and I just tried to push people's conscience a little bit and say, if we're all part of the industry that's making this stuff, we have to somehow take some responsibility for being the solution.
Et c'est dans cet état d'esprit donc que Bob a téléphoné l'année dernière à Philippe Doux pour le fameux Toon, mais vous le connaissez tous sous le nom de Toon, pour qui lui a proposé de venir lever ce problème au Paddle Sport Show avec Kayak Session et d'essayer de trouver des solutions de façon collective via le Paddle Sport Show.
And so that was a great chat, and I think a lot of people came away not remotivated, but interested, and we had a lot of positive feedback. I received so many emails after the show, and then I made some promises, and other people made some promises, but then life got back in the way. I took on a new job, which was very different, and I ran out of time. And I found myself almost 3/4 of the year later, and we hadn't moved forward, we hadn't done anything. And I felt embarrassed to come back here when Toon first said to me, come back, or Philippe said, come back. And I said, we haven't done anything. And so the question was, do I give up? And I couldn't look at myself in the mirror or look at my children or look at other people and say, yeah, I tried once and I gave up. So I'm being honest, I've gone a full year and I've come back and I'm here saying 1 year later, I didn't do anything that I promised I would do. Okay, so I have to hold my hands up and say, I failed in my promises. But what was really exciting is I started re-engaging with people, is that a number of people did things as a result of our small chat that we had this time last year. And so that re-motivated me. If people were inspired by just 25, 30 minutes of discussion and people made some significant effort to try and do better and they made progress and they had success, then surely we need to keep going. So I spoke with Philippe and we came back round and we said, okay, so what we're going to do, we're just going to come back and we're almost going to play repeat on some of this. We're going to talk about the successes because I'm a user, I'm not a manufacturer. It's not my place to lecture you and tell you what you should do. All I can do is try to use the opportunity of this stage to encourage people to be more future-minded and more sustainable. Because ultimately, and this is what I talked about in more detail last year, is that ultimately all of society is facing these problems. I don't need to go back and explain what all of these problems are to everybody. We all get it, we all know, and it's coming down the line. It's every year we see more climate change that's in our face, not in another country. More impact on what we do. You know, the fluctuation in river levels changes so much. Sorry.
Oui, la vie n'a pas permis à Bob malheureusement de s'investir plus dans le projet pendant l'année qui vient de s'écouler. En revanche, et en reprenant des contacts avec les différents participants ici l'année dernière, il s'est rendu compte qu'il y avait un certain nombre d'initiatives qui avaient été prises par différents fabricants, par différents manufacturiers. Et il voudrait aujourd'hui permettre à ces initiatives de s'exprimer, de faire part d'expériences et des éventuelles difficultés qu'ils ont pu avoir. Donc on avance un petit peu par rapport à l'année dernière, malheureusement pas autant que Bob l'aurait souhaité, mais ces grands chantiers n'avancent pas très vite, malheureusement, mais en tout cas ils avancent. Donc.
And so other people did things, but very strangely, because of me talking here, I got invited to talk on the same subject in other places. So almost it starts to become this self-fulfilling prophecy. You start talking about things and then people place you up there as an expert and I haven't done anything. I'm not the person that's done things. It's you people here. I'm staring in the faces of lots of people that have done things. So I think the best thing to do is to invite 1 or 2 people up here who have who've made big efforts to try to be more sustainable with their business model, who've faced challenges but have ultimately had some successes. Because I think in sharing those different successes, we can probably collaborate more and help one another. Where someone has a problem and someone else finds a solution, we can share that. So what I wanted to do for the next few minutes is invite a few people up, and I think the first person, if you're okay, Damien, is to invite Damien up from Rotterdam DAG to talk a little bit about some of their numbers, because they've been hugely successful with what they've achieved over the last few years.
Alors, ce qui est intéressant, c'est qu'après l'intervention que Bob a fait ici l'année dernière, il a été invité dans d'autres espaces pour parler de cette problématique du recyclage, alors que lui-même est utilisateur, il n'est pas fabricant. Et cette année, il nous propose d'inviter quelques fabricants à venir parler, parce que c'est eux qui ont la matière en quelque sorte, hein, à venir témoigner de des travaux qu'ils ont pu faire, des avancées qu'ils ont pu faire, de façon à ce que ça continue de participer au débat. Le premier, je crois donc, c'est voilà, Rotomode, Damien Garot de Rotomode.
Ça marche, oui. Je vais parler en français.
Oui, venez à côté de moi. We're going to make the other way around. You're going to be speaking in French and I'm going to translate in English the key ideas.
L'action reste la même depuis plusieurs années. Donc, le recyclage au sein de l'entreprise était externalisé pendant plusieurs années et depuis 8 ans, on l'a internalisé, c'est-à-dire qu'on a acheté un broyeur. Et on a rechangé de ligne de broyage il y a 2 ans. On a été accompagné par l'ADEME, qui est l'organisme français pour la transition écologique. Donc on est passé de 15 tonnes par an à cette année. On a broyé 200 tonnes de vieux kayaks et d'excédents de production.
Voilà, donc the company used to treat the plastic externally, but they finally decided to build a line internally to crunch the kayaks that they recoup. I believe you've been helped by the French state. Vous avez été aidé par l'État français. Yeah, there's been a help from the French state. And to give you an idea, they went from 15 tons to now 200 tons.
Yeah. Et en fait, ces 200 tonnes broyées, ça vient des excédents de production. Et aussi, on a organisé des collectes auprès des sociétés de location françaises, où nos commerciaux ou alors nos clients, quand ils viennent chez nous chercher leurs commandes, déposent les vieilles embarcations en fin de vie. Parce qu'il n'y avait pas de solution pour elles auprès des déchetteries françaises. Et donc nous, on a du personnel qui est dédié toute l'année à recycler et à retraiter ces excédents, ces bateaux. Donc, et après, on réintègre 10 à 15% dans la pièce industrielle ou dans nos embarcations également.
So the company has got two main source of acquiring plastic or getting plastic. The first one is production excess from different companies, so the boats that obviously haven't sold or have got defaults. And then they organize they are collecting towards rental companies that have got boats that have finished their lifespan and need to be recycled, but the public system is not operating for kayaks, and so it's their people who are collecting and manage to reinject 10 to 15% of the newly molded boats made out of recycled chips. How do you call it? On les appelle comment, les petits morceaux, les bits plastiques?
Les copeaux, et après on les envoie en traitement et ça revient en poudre recyclée.
All right, so chips transformed into powder.
En fait, on rencontre plusieurs problèmes. Donc, c'est la collecte des matériaux, enfin des embarcations en fin de vie, parce qu'on a organisé une collecte pendant la Coupe du Monde de kayak cross et de slalom en octobre 2023. Mais ça a coûté très cher le transport pour revenir de Paris jusqu'à nos usines. Et également, on a d'autres points de collecte. Alors, on est en train d'organiser ça justement avec l'ADEME et Écologique, qui est l'organisme qui a une sorte d'écotaxe française sur les produits de sport. Et on est en train d'organiser des modes de collecte, mais c'est toujours le transport qui pose problème. Mais la demande de la part de nos clients et des institutions, des politiques, c'est d'avoir des produits de plus en plus verts. Ce qui fait qu'il y a 5 ans, des pièces industrielles comme des micro-stations d'épuration, les gens ne voulaient pas entendre parler de produits recyclés, alors que désormais, une cuve, c'est 300 kg de poudre recyclée à 100%, quoi.
One of you were asking about the hurdles, and one of the big hurdle is the collecting. They tried during the World Cup to collect end-of-life products or products that had been used and were no longer usable. And during the collect, the key issue seems to be transport, which is extremely costly, or proportionally. But at the same time, there is a demand from the politics and the institutions, at least in France, to continue collect, and there is a public spending on these sort of issues. So you are being helped. Vous êtes aidé de plus en plus.
On doit payer pour être aidé.
You've got to pay to be helped. Okay.
Mais ça s'organise.
But it's getting organized.
Mais après, il y a un changement des mentalités. Nos clients ont pris conscience qu'on pouvait récupérer les bateaux, donc ça c'est intéressant. Et aussi, les politiques vont commencer à organiser des collectes pour que ça revienne et que ça soit remis dans le circuit, que ça soit vraiment circulaire, quoi.
Our friend is mentioning that the mentalities have evolved over the last couple of years, and both the clients and the politics are now insisting that the product should be, the service should be continued. So that's an interesting thing.
Et après, pour finir, donc on est situé dans le Lot-et-Garonne à Agen, et avec la communauté d'agglomération, en fait, il y a des échanges de procédés. Là, la semaine dernière, on a reçu peut-être 3 tonnes de bidons pour des produits phytosanitaires qui n'étaient pas convenables. Donc on va les broyer. Les anciennes palettes en bois, on les donne à un organisme qui fait des cabanes de jardin. Il y a une mutualisation locale qui s'organise afin de retraiter, d'être plus circulaire, même au niveau local. Donc il n'y a pas que la poudre, il y a aussi le bois des palettes. Il y a des bidons qui ne servaient pas. On récupère également, on envoie les gilets pour faire des sacs et des gilets d'upcycling avec un atelier d'insertion. Donc on est vraiment engagé à 100% dans la démarche.
So they are based in the southwest. It's coming back. There's something weird with. They are based in the southwest, and they tried, because of the transport issue, because of the volumes that are being dealt with. They deal with barrels as well, but they've also extended their service to other recycling issues, such as pallets, wooden pallets, in order to make the recycling a greater, and obviously there's got to be the fact that they're mutualizing some costs, particularly in transport. So by having more things to recycle, then the transport becomes divided amongst the various things.
Thank you.
Okay. Merci beaucoup pour ce témoignage. Thank you for this being a witness to these efforts.
Thanks so much, Damien. So next, I arrived late last night, and so I didn't get to see the presentation of the prizes for the show. But I looked this morning and saw that Prion had won the Sustainable Prize this year, and they're sitting amongst good company. We've got Peak 2-time winners, Level 6 1-time winners. So it'd be great if you could just come say a few words about the recycling of your boats before we move on to. Is that okay? Sorry to put you on the spot, but I think it's a great story, and it'd be wrong for us not to include you today.
Voilà, notre ami qui a reçu un prix hier soir, une award, comme on dit en... Je ne vais même pas traduire award, hein, c'est sur leur matériel, et qui viennent témoigner de leur système de fabrication, de leur système de recyclage.
Yeah, so thanks. Yeah, I'm from Brion. So we do different things in recycling our material, especially for our HTP material. We are able to reuse wasted material, or if we get out hulls which are damaged or not perfectly well, we cut them, grind them down, and we are able to 100% reuse all the waste material. It differs on the kind of models we do. If we produce whitewater boats, we have a higher amount of new HTP material. But when we when we produce the sea kayaks, then we can even go up to 70%, where we just use the reuse material, which we then don't have to throw away. And the other thing, what we also do is for the seats which we produce. We started it this year, where we ordered new material which is made by fisher nets. So there's this company, they collect all the old fisher nets in the ocean, and they made a process where they are able to produce this material where we get our seats out. It's slightly more costs, but we said it's worth it. Also, the surface of the material, it's not this perfect like our normal material, but we also said we like the idea of having this kind of fishernets in there and bringing something back. It's just a nice thinking, and I think when we start, also saying this to our customers, they also like, and then they are also fine with the surface which we have, which is slightly different than before.
Alors, leur société donc recycle le matériau HTP donc qui servent de base pour la fabrication. Alors, il s'agit de restes de production. There are production leftovers, in fact, and ils recyclent, donc ils arrivent à recycler 100% de ce qui est disponible et à injecter dans les nouveaux produits jusqu'à 70% de matériaux recyclés. If I've understood, si j'ai bien compris, if I understood well. Voilà. Et il y a également des filets de pêche qui sont utilisés et qui sont recyclés donc pour du matériel. Hang on, because we are recording.
So if I can ask you the question, you've made choices which cost you more, but that's a positive decision you've made because you see your customers value those initiatives.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Oui, donc tu restes là. La société a des coûts de production qui sont supérieurs, mais les clients sont prêts à payer. Alors, on avait parlé de ça. We spoke about that last year. I think the study that was made in the US last year showed that people were ready to pay up to 15% more. On avait une étude aux États-Unis qui montrait que les clients étaient prêts à payer jusqu'à 15% de plus sur du matériel recyclé. Do you have figures like this regarding the price that people are ready to pay a bit more?
No, we don't have to go this high. We just do it, and that's it. Yeah. So.
How much more do you think it costs? Do you have figures on that?
No.
Roughly?
Yeah, it's about 5%. For the material, so not
ouais, donc les coûts de production sont à peu près à 5% supplémentaires, donc il semblerait qu'on est dans les limites.
But it's also only a small amount because only the seeds. For all the recycling which we do with our own material, we have no cost at all because we just have the material, we cut it down, we grind it, and then we put it back in the machine, so this doesn't cost us anything.
C'est ça, un des points positifs, c'est que c'est leur propre matériau. So you don't have the transport issue that Damien was mentioning, okay, or the collect issue.
We make everything within our production line, and
c'est ça, c'est au sein de leur entreprise qu'ils recyclent, donc effectivement, pas de coût de collecte et de transport. Oui.
Well done with your initiative. That's really good. Just interested, can you recycle used kayaks and reuse the material?
It would be possible, but the problem about the used kayaks is that you have the dirt inside the material, and this may infect the material. So then we are not able to give our customers our warranty that the material is the pre-owned material. So this we can't do. I mean, we could do it. It probably would also work, but we just don't want to do it. Yeah.
Ouais, ils travaillent avec du matériel, du plastique recyclé neuf, donc ils ne traitent pas du matériel d'occasion comme vous le faites, ce qui explique donc qu'il y ait des pourcentages supérieurs de réinjection des poudres dans les nouveaux matériaux. But yeah, you play with new material.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Merci.
Okay. So, staying on the subject of boats, I think it's a great, his exit comment about the dirt in the plastic we were discussing just this morning, Graham. I don't know whether you were prepared to say a few words. I hand over to Graham.
We are reaching. We are going to have a word about the present. Pardon, excusez-moi, je vais en français. Un petit mot donc sur une spécificité du recyclage, c'est la saleté qui se trouvent à l'intérieur des produits qu'on recycle?
Let's just go back a little bit. Although we don't publish figures, and to be honest, I can't tell you just how long we've been recycling. But recycling our waste has been something we've done for a very long time. Maybe 20 years, I don't know. We've chipped it, we sell it into the market, but we will only use it in non-structural items such as seats. Because of the use of our product, we're extremely sensitive to the physical values of our material. Part of the problem we have faced over the years is that our suppliers of recent years have just not been interested in recycling our polymer for us. It's been a fight that we've had for, I don't know how long. We have now found a supplier who is a lot more interested. But one of the problems that we face is that without lab testing the physical properties, our testing ability is limited. And although we do drop test every boat that we make to ensure that its physical properties are up to the use that it's going to be used, getting the real data is a very expensive business, and we can't find anybody who's got any data as to what the physical drop-off is after you recycle once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times. And when you buy recycled plastic, you've got no idea what's in it, how many times it's been recycled, and what its physical properties are going to be.
Alors, la société là, donc, fait du recyclage depuis 20 ans, mais on soulève là un problème qui est fort intéressant, c'est qu'en fait, il n'y a pas de data, il n'y a pas de chiffres réels sur les capacités physiques de ces matériaux qui sont recyclés. Est-ce que ça se recycle 1 fois, 2 fois, 3 fois, 4 fois? On ne sait pas très bien, donc il y a très clairement une inconnue qui bloque, parce qu'on ne sait pas non plus du coup physiquement les possibilités, jusqu'à quel point on peut aller sur du recyclage.
It was very interesting listening to Damien talking about actually getting some help from the state and encouragement, because we're not seeing anything like that in the UK. There's an expectation that we're going to be able to do these things. So I hope we can have a conversation later, Damien, to find out just how you've been getting help, because we need to encourage our government to help us get this data so that we have a greater ability and responsibility to ensure that what we do is fit for purpose.
Oui, notre ami donc se tourne vers Damien de Rotomode là, qui a fait cette présentation tout à l'heure, pour lui dire en Grande-Bretagne, malheureusement, nous n'avons pas d'aide de l'État et il faut se farcir toutes les études, tous les financements de choses de ce style. Je crois d'ailleurs qu'il vous invite à vous rencontrer après la réunion pour savoir comment vous faites pour obtenir des aides du gouvernement français, peut-être pour pouvoir le faire en Grande-Bretagne également, parce que effectivement, c'est toujours difficile pour un secteur d'avoir à tout financer quand il se lance dans des aventures de ce style.
I also find it encouraging that in Germany there is an acceptance that the extra cost involved in recycling is becoming more acceptable, and also in America. I'm not sure that's necessarily the state in Britain. Hopefully that will come too, and that we will follow. Because for sure it is a much more expensive process, but it is something that we absolutely have to do. And I know we're on a journey. We don't publish much information about it, but it is happening in Piranha all the time. We are finding ways of improving our carbon footprint.
Alors, je réjouis que en Allemagne et aux USA, il y a une acceptation tacite du marché sur l'excès de prix vis-à-vis d'un produit recyclé. Il n'est pas tout à fait sûr que la population britannique soit prête, soit dans les mêmes dispositions d'esprit que d'autres Européens ou que les Américains. Ils l'espèrent en tout cas.
Does anyone have any questions for Graham about anything to do with the recycling? Okay, thanks so much, Graham.
Merci.
Let's
And
move away.
So the meeting is organized between
Yeah.
Damien and Graham for after the meeting.
and that sort of thing is great. So if the only outcome we have from this morning is you two share your successes and help another company start to achieve the same levels of recycling you do, that is a great outcome. Let's move on from boats, because boats is one thing, and that can be a very tangible item that is made of a major petrochemical. But then we move into software. So if it's okay with Stig, if I can invite Stig up here from level 6.
Voilà, on va avancer des bateaux et on va passer. Sorry, Tim, well, you're gonna. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you. What are your products? So if it's not boats.
Paddling gear, accessories.
Voilà, donc on passe sur les accessoires cette fois-ci. On s'éloigne des bateaux, on passe sur les accessoires pour voir les problématiques de recyclage. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, we did talk about this last year originally. I guess I'll talk a bit about how we got to where we are in our recycling and sustainability journey. About 10, 12 years ago, we looked at all of the plastic poly bags that our product was coming in, and we thought, like, this is insane that we're packaging things that don't need to be protected in poly bags within another master poly bag. So we looked strictly eliminating that, because there's a lot of talk about recycling products, but if we can get the harmful materials out of the beginning, it's actually much more sustainable versus trying to deal with it afterwards. So single-use plastic bags, really hard to recycle, especially in Canada. So we took that and we started changing how we packaged our goods. It took a lot of effort to teach our factories and also to teach our retailers that this was an accepted practice. So for instance, all of our board shorts and our casual apparel, we take all the end cuts of the bolts of fabric and it's called burrito rolling. We roll all of our garments and then we tie them with that scrap fabric. Stores loved it because it was easier for them to box it, unpackage it, store it. And for us, we eliminated the poly bag.
Alors, depuis 10 ou 12 ans, donc, cette société a commencé à réfléchir à ces problèmes de packaging qui étaient faits traditionnellement avec du plastique, hein, les sacs, les packages. Alors le problème, c'est qu'il faut prendre très en amont pour pouvoir en fait changer les modalités de packaging et éviter donc la présence de plastique comme c'est traditionnellement. C'est aussi une dimension d'éducation des entreprises, des fournisseurs à qui il faut habituer à changer de pratique.
So from there, we started looking at our more technical apparel, dry suits, dry tops, where it's difficult to do this kind of procedure. And also there's an expectation level that this product needs to come to a store. It's a $1,000, $1,200 product that has to have a certain, no wrinkles, protection of the gaskets, the zipper, you can't bend it the same way. So we developed the technique of using a cardboard box, which I'm proud to say that I feel we were the first ones. I see it now at three other companies here, which is great. It's a great way of storing that product. It also keeps it protected from UV light during the it's at the retail shelf. Our drawback is that the cost of the boxes are expensive. It's a bit bulkier, so we had a hard time getting our non-latex garments out of the poly bags. We share the same factory as Arc'teryx, Patagonia, Salomon, Burton in Vietnam, and so we were very, very conscious of what were they doing. And I was surprised to learn that all of these companies ship their goods in plastic poly bags to this day. And so we looked at, if you buy a Patagonia jacket, it will come in a plastic poly bag all the way through the chain. We looked at ways of using a compostable bag. Unfortunately, compostable bags, they degrade depending on transit times, storage life. So we came with a method of using a cardboard sleeve. So we kind of copy what we did in our casual wear into our technical garments. So all of our technical garments now come not in a poly bag. They come rolled a special way, a cardboard sleeve on them to keep them protected, and they can sit on the shelf and hung that way as well.
Oui, donc le jeu était d'essayer de trouver d'autres moyens de packager. Ils se sont tournés vers des concurrents ou des collègues qui en fait continuent d'utiliser beaucoup de plastique pour envelopper leurs produits. Là, on parle beaucoup des produits comme les vêtements, on n'est plus sur les bateaux. Et ils essayent donc de remplacer par du carton, cardboard. du carton avec un système de roulage des vêtements parce que évidemment il faut qu'il n'y ait pas de plis, il faut pas qu'il y ait de marques sur le vêtement.
So today, as of this point in time, last year starting, there's not a single level 6 item that comes in a plastic poly bag. So we save over 100,000 poly bags a year is now eliminated from the system. That's just us. And there, you translate that all the way through, that's a significant amount of plastic. So that was kind of that packaging portion, which we did. And that was just more of an education of the whole supply chain to get them to try this method. We also, at the same time, we were looking at recycled fabrics. So about 5-6 years ago, all of our apparel became 100% recycled. 2 years ago, we launched the Loki dry suit, which was the world's first PFAS-free recycled fabric dry suit. From there, the success we built off in getting that product, now 95% of everything Level 6 makes is 100% recycled fabric. 98% of everything Level 6 makes is PFAS-free.
Donc, en utilisant ces techniques de rouler de carton, donc ils sont arrivés à économiser, à supprimer de leur process 100 000 bags, 100 000 sacs plastiques, ce qui pour une seule société est quand même assez impressionnant. Et puis, ils s'intéressent aujourd'hui au recyclage des tissus, recycling fabrics, avec des taux. On est un peu dans les mêmes chiffres qui ont été évoqués tout à l'heure. 95% de leurs produits sont 100% recyclés. Donc on atteint des taux, you are reaching rates of recycling that are extremely high, donc qui sont des taux qui sont extrêmement élevés.
So that's kind of where we got to now, and we were hoping to be here in 5 years, and we managed to do it quite quickly because of that effort and the push. We talk about costing; it does cost more, 15 to 30% more for the fabric cost, depending on what the product is. But again, the consumer wants that. There is a report that came out that during economic downturns, it's the first thing that consumers don't care about. But you have to really stake your claim on it. You can't shift from that method.
Et ils arrivent donc. Alors effectivement, il y a le même coût additionnel du fait du recyclage qui est entre 15 et 30%, mais a priori donc les consommateurs sont prêts. Which leads me to a question. You say your consumers are ready to absorb between 15 to 30% increase in the price, or do you take part of this price increase away from your margins? Est-ce que le consommateur absorbe les 15 ou 30% en plus, ou est-ce que la société prend sur sa marge? What is the split?
So when I say 15 to 30%, that's the fabric cost.
Right.
That's only a small portion of creating the garment, obviously, but the consumer, taking away economic downturns, do pay more for a sustainable recycled product. The unfortunate problem is, we're in a global recession right now, even though we want to talk about it. That is the first thing that consumers will walk away from. They're very price sensitive. So you have to convince the consumer this is the right way of doing things, and then you have to do it. But we absorb, I would say, maybe 50% of that cost in the short term, and then we pass the rest on.
Donc on est sur des chiffres d'ailleurs qui avaient été mentionnés l'année dernière sur le fait que sur les 15 à 30% d'excès de prix, le consommateur est prêt à en prendre une partie et la société en prend à peu près 50% en charge, sachant que sur le prix, on parle des tissus. Et donc évidemment, les vêtements ensuite sont retravaillés. Et donc voilà, donc il y a une partie qui est prise en charge par l'entreprise et une partie par le consommateur.
So again, the last part of this kind of the story is taking care of the gear as it reaches end of life, which I think you're going to talk about as well. I feel as manufacturers and designers of equipment and gear, it's our responsibility as well to try to ensure you can maximize the life expectancy of that product. So at Level 6, we have a full repair facility, a carbon copy of what our factories have, from the seam tape machine all the way to the sewing machines. So if someone has a problem with their gear and it is repairable, we will take that back, we'll fix it for them, and we'll send it back to them. We pressure test, for example, a dry suit pressure test, we change the gaskets, we can re-seam tape an entire dry suit, and we send it back to that customer in order to maximize, maybe you get 3 or 4 more years out of that, so there's complete fabric failure.
Alors ils sont également intéressés à Level 6, ils sont intéressés à la fin de vie des produits. avec un système de machinerie qui leur permet de récupérer des vêtements ou du matériel qui est endommagé et de lui redonner 3 ou 4 ans de vie avec des réparations.
And then when the garment is impossible to be repaired in our facility, then we save that fabric and we can create something new from it, you know, a courier bag or a bag. But that's kind of the end of the story of that.
Okay. Et s'ils ne peuvent pas le réparer, eh bien le tissu est réutilisé pour d'autres pièces.
So I guess that's what we do with level 6. I think one thing I just wanted to also mention, I mean, some of you may have heard what's happening in North America right now with the Paddle Sports Trade Coalition. Being part of that movement, there is a desire to kind of streamline maybe a bit of the overproduction and the excess production of goods and then having to dump that product, kind of protecting the industry. So part of what we're looking at doing is being able to have a anonymous data dump from all the brands into a portal, which would be generated through AI, that we'll be able to see exactly what products are trending, what colors are trending, what styles of products are trending by state, by country. That way, if you know, for example, that blue life jackets are incredibly popular in California, well, then you don't want to overproduce yellow life jackets as a clean example of that. I think that's going to help us as well reduce this guessing of how much you need to build, what colors you need to build, and what stores are actually willing to buy.
What is this coalition you are talking about again?
It's called the Paddle Sports Trade Coalition.
Alors, un point intéressant qui peut peut-être inspirer les Européens, maybe that could inspire Europeans as well, is this coalition. C'est une coalition qui a été créée entre plusieurs sociétés et qui, au-delà du recyclage, collecte des data. There is a data collection plus an AI analysis. C'est ça, donc une collecte de data avec une intelligence artificielle qui calcule les meilleures couleurs, les meilleurs tissus, et qui donne des informations au niveau de la production. Donc il y a vraiment, it's a circular system. Voilà, il y a un système circulaire qui est en train de se mettre en place au sein de cette coalition, de façon à ce que la production prenne en compte la fin de vie des produits, so that the production takes into account the end of life product, so that you don't produce things that can't be dealt with at the end, de façon à ce qu'on produise moins de choses qui ne puissent pas être reprises en fin de vie. Voilà.
Yeah, so I get the big takeaway, obviously, what we're doing here is, by collaborating and working together, we get to share ideas, and then it pushes all of us to be better. I think we all look up to the brands that win these sustainability awards, and we always try to be as good as what they're doing. So I think being part of this collective and being here at the show obviously helps inspire that kind of movement forward. So
you have regular meetings with your coalition to exchange ideas and to exchange ways of dealings. Yeah.
Yes, that's the plan.
C'est ça, donc il y a des réunions régulières de la coalition qui leur permettent d'ajuster leur système de fonctionnement.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Merci.
Okay, so I found my cursor. There you go. So next, if I can invite Pete to follow on, I think he's got some complementary things to what Stig was just talking about.
You're right, thank you very much, Bob.
Pete de Pic 5.
Yeah. Pete Astles from Peak Paddle Sports. We've never claimed actually to be sustainable at all. We've just tried to be more sustainable, which I would say is better than we were before. That's our ethos, because obviously everything we make is plastic derived, and we do have an impact on the planet, and perhaps not doing it would be better than doing it. So we've had reasonable success with being more sustainable, very much like Stig was saying before. We removed all plastic packaging many years ago. We virtually have no packaging at all for our products. We use as much as possible recycled yarns in our jackets and thermals and base layers. The waterproof or the water repellent finishes are PFAS free, CFC free, better for the environment. So we've kind of achieved as much as we currently can on those levels. And then last year we introduced a couple of products that we kind of promoted as circular ready, and the idea with those was to make them out of one plastic, polyester, trying to remove polyurethanes and complicated other plastics within those products to make them actually recyclable at the end of their life. That's really as far as we've got. The logo we created has got a little dash section on it, which is actually the bit we need to complete. And at the moment, I've found contacts that are beginning to recycle polyester textiles and polyethylene foams and those things, but it's not necessarily workable yet. But I think we're early days, and hopefully in the future we can find that. So at the moment, we're super keen to find end-of-life solutions, recycling solutions, but we're working on it. So if anyone's got any good contacts, I can tell you in a moment how far we've got with things.
Donc la société n'est pas particulièrement tournée vers le recycling, hein, vers le recyclage. En revanche, c'est dès l'origine dans les systèmes de packaging que la société donc cherche et fait avec succès d'ailleurs, soit d'arrêter le packaging plastique. Donc on le voit sur la photo d'ailleurs, il n'y a pas de packaging plastique. Et dans ces matériaux utilisés, eh bien, de ne pas utiliser de matériaux avec du CFC ou avec du polyuréthane ou avec d'autres produits. Donc il y a une sélection des produits dès l'origine. Mais on est là sur une prise de produit en amont, hein, dès le départ du packaging.
Okay, so we've had some success. We found a company that will actually recycle neoprene, a company called Circular Flow. We've been looking into this, and we've come across a couple of hurdles. Is one, they're in Bulgaria, so the cost to ship back to Bulgaria is very expensive. And then also the products that they can make from the recycled neoprene, they're quite crude products, but they're also quite expensive. So we were looking at some roof rack pads, for instance, to make from old wetsuits. And the problem is the product was 2 to 3 times more expensive than a regular roof rack pad. So we've kind of shelved the project slightly because we don't think people would pay 40, 50 euros for a set of roof rack pads when you can buy some regular nylon ones for £20. So it's kind of, at the moment, we're at a little bit of a junction or frustrating point where it's not actually cost effective to follow that route. We also found some a company that's taking polyester textiles from us, offcuts, and they're starting to chemically recycle, but it's very early days, and actually what they get out from these materials, it's difficult to know what they do with them.
Alors, on a déjà évoqué ça dans d'autres professionnels ont évoqué cet obstacle qui est le coût des transports, donc pour les produits en fin de vie. Le coût du transport reste très important. Sur certains produits, donc le recyclage permet de refaire des matériaux, mais avec des coûts augmentés qui sont là non plus 15 ou 30%, mais on est sur du x2 ou du x3 sur certains produits, donc c'est un obstacle massif. Et puis en ce moment, ils cherchent des solutions de retraitement des textiles polyester avec des traitements chimiques. Mais c'est encore un peu l'aventure et on est un petit peu comme nos amis tout à l'heure. C'est eux qui financent l'ensemble de ces recherches, donc c'est un petit peu compliqué.
Okay, so yeah, we're looking ultimately for some end-of-life solutions. Something else I was considering, because of the cost of sending, say, wetsuit items to Bulgaria, is whether the consumers would actually pay to have things recycled, because obviously there's quite a big cost involved. So again, it was considering how we could make that work. So at the moment we don't have a solution, but we're obviously thinking of it and working on it, and whether together we can come up with something. But textile recycling is very difficult, and especially if it's waterproof materials that have got several different layers of different plastics. I think we're hoping for it's a tough journey. It's going to be a long journey to find that solution.
Le traitement des équipements en fin de vie reste un problème substantiel, notamment donc les textiles, dont le traitement est extrêmement difficile, et puis surtout les matériaux avec différentes couches, différents plastiques. C'est extrêmement difficile à traiter. Il y a eu des initiatives avec certains pays de l'Est, mais ça reste très compliqué.
Okay, thank you very much.
Merci, thank you.
Thanks, Pete. I'm gonna just say a few words following on from what Pete said and what Stig was saying. So, as I said before, the organisation I work for is a big company that has lots of adventure centres. So we have 2,500 employees, and they all have uniform. And we had this issue of what do we do with uniform when it comes to end of life. Very similarly, we tried lots and lots of different solutions. In the end, the only one that kind of ticked the sustainable box that we needed to achieve for an organisation we're submitting ourselves to for measurement, which I'll talk about in a few moments, was to take them to a company that turns them into fuel pellets. So they take all the clothing and they turn it into fuel pellets, and they use that for environmentally acceptable power stations. So they kind of turn it into little polyester plastic pellets, they burn them at a super high temperature, and they do gas capture. So they pull off all the noxious gases, and that goes into a chemical recycling process where they make base gases or base elements. Apparently it's sustainable and green, and it has all the right ticks, but like you, there's question marks in my head about is the right thing.
C'est un commentaire par rapport à ce que tu disais sur la fin de vie. La société de Bob emploie presque 2000 personnes, donc ils ont le problème de traiter les vêtements du personnel, et ils ont trouvé effectivement une solution pour transformer les vêtements en carburant, mais c'est un traitement qui alors apparemment est vert, puisque quand ça brûle, il y a en plus un traitement des fumées, mais c'est effectivement extraordinairement compliqué, oui.
And then the other thing, which I wanted to catch the chap who was here and asked some questions earlier with Eric's talk, about we can repair, like we're taking end of life items like level 6 we're talking about. We can upcycle and transform them into different things. And the other thing that's possible is just to reuse them. But there's an ethical question in my head about this. So what we were doing for a period of time was taking all of our old PFDs that no longer met European standards, i.e. they were over a certain life. They were still passing float tests, they were beyond a certain life. And we were sending them to charitable organizations in Africa and India that have their own adventure projects, which is great. But then there's a question about, well, if they don't meet our standards, why are they safe for other people to use? But there's a space there potentially for doing the right thing, because if we have our standards set super high, and we all know that behind those they're still fit to use, can they have a second life somewhere where the society isn't rich enough to buy new?
Et oui, un test qui a été alors un retour d'expérience, mais qui n'est pas forcément satisfaisant de son point de vue. Le matériel qui ne correspond plus aux standards de sécurité, donc soit est réparé, recyclé, mais également donné à des œuvres caritatives, par exemple en Afrique. Mais la question se pose de savoir si quelque chose n'est plus aux standards de sécurité dans un pays, pourquoi il le serait dans un autre pays au prétexte que c'est un don. Voilà, donc il y a un problème éthique derrière ces techniques de réutilisation.
Okay, so I'm really mindful of time. We're pushing nearly an hour now, so I'm going to push over and into this. So what I wanted to talk a little bit about to wind things up, and I just wanted to say thanks so much to all of our, what I call our witnesses that have come up and talked about their journeys and shared their experiences, is just a little bit about some of the challenges. So we make stuff in factories, we transport it out, and it gets out to the retailers or the distributors, and then it just fans its way out. Oop. Why that's jumped. Sorry, I've slipped my cursor. There we go. Okay. And it fans its way out. And I think this is one of the issues that Damien was talking about when he's bringing things back in for recycling. You have a huge amount of cost. So how do these items get back into the recycling system? That's often one of the blocks. And one of the things we talked about last year was whether we can have some kind of virtuous circle or some kind of system where the transport chain that gets things out is also the transport chain that brings things back. So I've chatted to a couple of people about, for a boat to be fit to be recycled, it needs to have all the metal fittings taken out, and it needs to be broken down into smaller pieces. So we could effectively say, if you want your boat to be recycled, you want to do the responsible thing. You, as the owner of that boat, takes all the metal out. The metal can go to your local déchetterie recycling place, and they'll take metal. You then cut up your boat into smaller pieces, and you can fit it in a cardboard box. You take the cardboard box to the shop, and the shop then puts it back in the lorry when the next bunch of boats are delivered, and then it finds its way back into the place where it originally came from and takes out some of these blocks, some of these costs. Now, each one of these will need a specific solution, but it must be possible to use those chains that are moving back and forth in some way to perhaps move things back to a place where they can be recycled.
Des idées, mais également des difficultés dans le cadre du transport, puisque vous l'avez compris, c'est le transport et les collectes qui coûtent cher, qui sont compliqués. C'est d'utiliser les systèmes de transport dans un sens pour renvoyer le matériel dans un autre sens. Alors évidemment, ça veut dire, par exemple, pour des bateaux, que le propriétaire doit couper les morceaux de métaux et les jeter localement, découper son bateau, le mettre dans un carton, le ramener au magasin. Enfin, c'est des idées, mais c'est aussi des idées compliquées quelquefois à mettre en œuvre.
Okay, and then what I wanted to do is jump forward here a little bit and take some of my experiences. So the reason I've been so busy, I'm still working for the same organisation but in a different role, is that one of the things our organisation's committed to is to chase B Corp status. If you're not clear what B Corp status is, it's a label. A number of companies are pursuing this label now. Patagonia was one of the first. Innocent Smoothies. Basically, it's a label that says everything about your business is positive and is pushing in the right direction. So there's a number of pillars within there. You have to be doing things in a sustainable way for the environment. You need to be looking after your customers in a responsible way. You need to be doing things for the community. You need to have a really good central corporate governance process, and you need to take real care of your workers. So you have to be paying fair wages. You have to have really good maternity policies, paternity policies, menopause policies, many things to support everything. And when you tick enough categories in each of these areas, you can achieve B Corp status. And what I found in the process of working on this year for the organisation I'm employed by is it makes you do things you wouldn't normally do. So we were initially going after the environmental thing. That's what we wanted to do. But then we started to have to do things to look after our customers and to look after our suppliers and to look after our employees in a far better way than we'd ever imagined at the beginning of the journey.
Oui, Bob a été très occupé cette année par la classification en B Corporation, donc de B Corporation de sa société. Alors qu'est-ce que c'est B Corporation? En fait, c'est un label, en quelque sorte, qui repose sur 5 piliers, sur 5 points clés dans l'entreprise. Et dès lors que les travailleurs sont payés convenablement, qu'on a géré l'environnement, la relation avec les clients, les techniques de gouvernance qui sont correctes, et la communauté qui est gérée de façon convenable, eh bien on obtient ce label. Donc c'est un fonctionnement dans une bonne gouvernance et qui inclut bien évidemment le traitement des produits.
And it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of cost. But for the organisation I work for, we see the long-term value in that because it increases the value of the business in the long term. Customers value it. The type of people we sell our educational experiences to want to see an organisation having that. But it's complicated and it's big. Eric this morning talked about paralleling the ski industry in manufacturing and coaching of paddlers, and that's exactly the kind of route I've been following in my ideas and thoughts as well. So jumping across to skiing, within France there's the floc en vert labelism, and that has a whole series of criteria in 4 pillars in this case, which basically measures a ski station or a ski resort in its energy, and it's looking after its resources, social and dynamic cultural experiences, and so on.
Le ski fait quelque chose de similaire avec ce qui s'appelle le flocon vert, the green flake, et le flocon vert, donc comme vous le voyez, repose sur 4 ou 5 éléments clés également qui permettent d'obtenir ce label. Donc c'est quelque chose qui existe déjà pour le matériel d'hiver et qu'on peut reproduire sur le matériel d'été.
And here's some examples of some of the more well-known resorts in France. There's a flocon vert 1, a flocon vert 2, and at the moment nobody's got a flocon vert 3, the 3 flocons. But interestingly, B Corp is very difficult to get. If you look at I think there's 32 resorts in France which have a flocon vert of 1 or 2, but out of them, there's only Les Arcs that's gone on to achieve B Corp. So Les Arcs is now a B Corp status ski resort. It's the only one in Europe, and they've seen that as a huge advantage. You know, they've invested massively, and they're now changing their practices in the way in which they manage water for the artificial snow and so on and so on. So it's forcing them to do so much more for the environment.
Et ça oblige, comme on dit en français, les sociétés à contrôler leur système de fonctionnement. On a l'exemple des arcs, par exemple, qui est à la fois flocon vert et B Corp, B Corporation. Voilà, c'est un exemple dans le monde du ski.
And so, I mean, those are challenging things. B Corp is challenging. It's taken a huge organisation that I work for a long time to even get close, and we're still a long way off over the next few months. We've got a lot of work to do. But what that poses the question is, within the paddle sport industry, is there a value in having our own label? Rather than, you know, it will be very difficult to fit these other ones, but we don't currently have something. Is it a good idea for us to get a collective of people together to look at what the values would be for a sustainable badge or a sustainable label, and then people can submit themselves towards that. And then those people, like many of you this morning who are making the effort, it actually sets you apart and shows you're working really hard. And then for those people that aspire to that, it gives them a framework, because when you're caught in the midst of running a business and doing everything else, it's very easy for these things to fall away. Whereas if you commit to a route and say, okay, I'm going to follow this pathway, and in 3 months' time I need to do that, in 5 months' time I need to do that, we'll all gently be moving along this pathway, doing the right things collaboratively and working towards a sustainable goal, which will ultimately allow all of us to continue to manufacture and sell. Because if we don't react to the market and react to the future, two things have been said repeatedly this morning. It's about client expectations and wants, and it's also about external governance. So local governments, regional governments, national governments, European legislation, international legislation will inevitably make us make these changes. So it's got to be better to be voluntarily making them early and working towards those.
Yeah, so what Bob puts on the table, ce que Bob met sur la table aujourd'hui, c'est ni plus ni moins. It's very close to the coalition you were mentioning. C'est très proche de l'idée de la coalition, c'est de faire un groupe de travail en fait qui se constitue, qui crée son propre label, avec de façon on le sait bien pour tous ceux qui ont été impliqués dans des syndicats ou des choses de ce style, si nous ne faisons pas nous-mêmes, c'est un politique qui fera à notre place un jour ou l'autre, ou qui viendra nous mettre devant le nez le fait que l'on n'a pas fait ce que l'on aurait dû faire en matière notamment d'environnement. I was just mentioning that the situation is always the same with the unions. I'm part of a union, and I know very well that the politics have always, you know, if the trade doesn't do, some politic will do and impose their views at some stage, whether it's national governments, whether it's European governments. When things become more important and politically touchy, they will turn to the sector and they will say, hey guys, you're going to do this from now on. If the sector already does something, it's much more difficult for the governments to go do this, do that, because it's been defined earlier on. Donc on le sait, je le répète, quand un secteur ne fait pas, si les politiques veulent faire, ils se mettent d'un seul coup à imposer quelque chose, y compris n'importe quoi, parce que ça arrive aussi.
And so that's where I finish really, is just to say what's next. We've come back together, we've talked about this, I've asked people to share their experiences, we've done that. Last year I walked away from here motivated, hugely excited, and thought we'd really make big steps forward, and that didn't happen. But I'm back here again saying let's be more constructive this time. But I can't impose. It's not my place to. I'm here as a buyer. I'm not here as a manufacturer. But I would love to see these things move forward. So the question is really to the small number of you here: what do we do next? How do we take this forward? Do we copy what's been done in North America and create a collective? Do we communicate between a collective in Europe or globally or whatever? Where do we go next, and how do we take that forward?
La question est au secteur. Est-ce que le secteur crée un collectif formel ou informel d'ailleurs, qui a comme vue de traiter, de discuter de ces problématiques et éventuellement d'ailleurs de créer un label. Enfin bon, voilà, la question est ouverte.
And I guess my idea at the moment would be, for the sake of nobody wanting to come forward and doing that, then someone starts, we create a voluntary one, and then that will have an initial momentum, and then it'll reach a stage where people get interested enough to say, well, hang on, I don't think it's robust enough, I don't think it has enough rigor, and then some form of committee or group will form around it and take control of it and turn it into something much greater in the future.
Oui, ça peut être quelque chose de volontaire dans un premier temps et puis qui se développe. C'est au secteur de faire des propositions maintenant.
So, any thoughts or contributions? Yeah.
I'll just speak to this because it's exactly what we're kind of doing. This badge that we're talking about, like a PTC certified company, and that's a company that kind of speaks a bit what EJ was saying about a company that, not being a leech, quote unquote, but if you are in this industry, we have responsibility to this industry, whether it's committing to watershed conservation, whether it's committing to kayak schools, getting people involved in the sport, and trying to set that standard. Now, as we all know, there's 1,000 different organizations that want you to be part of them. Higgs Index, B Corp, it goes on and on and on. There's a flavor of the moment. And people who've been in this industry for a long time, it scares them to think, okay, another certification process, another badge I need to apply for. So we have to do it gently, and I think it has to be part of a collective, and which is what the PTC is. It's a membership-owned and driven organization where every single person has the same voice, whether you're an outfitter in the middle of Arkansas or whether you are, Confluence Pelican, the largest boat brand. Everyone has an equal say in what has to happen. Do you want to do the French version of that?
Oui. Donc effectivement, la création d'un collectif, c'est ce qui s'est passé chez eux. Alors, qui ne traite pas d'ailleurs que du problème du recyclage. Il y a différents sujets qui sont traités. You've got other topics than just recycling. You've got and standards et des standards, par exemple. Alors, ça peut être quelque chose de très simple, avec des gens qui ont une voix. Enfin, il n'y a pas d'avantage particulier. C'est une organisation, une voix, et qui fait qu'on est là pour écouter les gens. Il n'y a pas de rapport de force.
So, if you can imagine in Florida, it's people don't paddle with life jackets and people die. So is there a standard, a PTC, in this case, standard where if you're an outfitter or you're a retailer, there are certain things you need to do in order to earn that badge. And then the paddle sports community, the paddle sports global community understands that if they're going to go and only shop or participate with retailers, brands, and outfitters that have this certification, this badge, in order to kind of drive people towards perfection or excellence. And it can look a different way for each person. If it's an outfitter, you have to have a certain level of training. If you're a brand, you have to have a certain level of environmental sustainability, or being able to give back to the community to get more people in. If you're a retailer, that has to be a certain level of structure in how you sell a product or a boat or a life jacket or a paddle. So all of that's kind of being formulated and talked about.
Oui, parmi les sujets d'ailleurs, il peut y avoir des choses comme des standards, des badges, des formations minimum, enfin tous ces sujets qui concernent soit des prestataires de services, soit des magasins, soit qui peuvent faire partie de la coalition ou du groupe.
And I think the most important thing too, in North America, we are, the Amazon effect is real, and I think making sure that the community as a whole is supporting outfitters, brands, retailers, sales reps, guides that are all actively trying to participate and grow the industry. It really is a way for us to ensure that legitimate people who are this is their passion, this is their lifeblood, are being rewarded for that. And I will say, as my final note, after the PTC Collab event, which we had in early September, the takeaway, we had retailers emailing the board of directors saying that they sent an email out to all of their sales reps and said that they will only purchase from brands that are members of the PTC, because there's that much drive and dedication and want for success in kind of reuniting the paddle sports industry.
Voilà, il y a l'avantage également, c'est qu'une fois que ces normes ou ces standards ou ces badges, ces formations sont créées, ça assure une certaine qualité de service, une qualité de prestation. The badges and certification ensure a certain level of quality. Et il y a même donc des revendeurs qui ne veulent plus vendre autre chose que ceux qui sont certifiés. Donc il y a des avantages dans même si c'est un petit peu difficile à mettre en place. Je pense que ce que notre ami veut nous faire passer, c'est que il peut y avoir des avantages extrêmement positifs à avoir ce genre de collectif.
Thanks.
Well, I think there we finish. So thank you so much, everybody that's contributed. Thank you, Jean-Yves, and thank
Bob.
you for Philippe and Joel for organising.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Bob. And we will be talking during the year and next year, but during the year we will be talking. Et on en reparlera pendant l'année.